welcome back. Thank you. Hope there were no biscuits left. Collaborative working is next on our agenda. Back in, I was trying to work out when it was, 2003, 2004, I was part of a working group set up by BS 1100, by British Standards Institute, to write a new standard for collaborative working, which became PAS 11,000, which became BS 11,000, which has become ISO 44,000. Because I passionately believe that collaborative working is the only way to make FM work properly, and that's within your supply chain and clients and suppliers. And you know, we have way too much friction within our sector. Anyway, so then when I see a headline for us talk called Collaborative Working That Works, I'm all ears. And especially when it comes from EMCOR UK, who were the first FM company to be certified to BS 11,000, as they were to ISO 44,001. Yes, sorry. So please, a big warm hand for the Executive Director of Marketing and Business Development for EMCOR UK, Jeremy Campbell.
Thanks, Martin. And I do recall those days in 2003. We spent a lot of time together presenting collaboration, particularly around BS 11,000 as was and ISO 44,001 as is now. Unfortunately, it may well be a dry subject, and I'm glad that we had the break and didn't have to come straight on after Claire. I was thinking about doing a stand-up, A or B. Should you be on stand-up, Claire? The answer's got to be yes, I think, without any doubt. But it's been a fantastic day, and thank you very much for the invite and the opportunity to be here. I guess one thing I am going to take away from this, having heard some really fantastic speakers throughout the day, is that one could argue that we are probably on the cusp of the greatest transformational change of humankind since probably we formed agriculture and moved into cities, some sort of 5,000-6,000 years ago. I think that the future is such an opportunist place, but at the same time, I think there are real, tangible and present problems that face our world and subsequently face our industry. I'm not suggesting, certainly personally, that anyone in the room here today is on a mission comparable with James's Greta or James's Jeremy Clarkson. But what I'm definitely going to say today is I really believe we need to find a better way. I kind of think that we need to protect our planet. I think everybody understands that. We need to hit our net zero targets, whether you're operating towards 2030 or the government stretch targets into 2035. I also think that we need to widen the conversation. It's not all about the net zero, the carbon neutrality, the decarbonisation of our world. Yes, it is really important, but we need to find alternative energy, whether that's electrification, hydrofication, or whether we start to look at fusion. But equally, we need to think about the broader sustainable development goals, which we talked about earlier this morning. Many years ago, I was really involved with WaterAid, which is a UK charity to help people less fortunate than ourselves to access fresh water and to have basic sanitation. If you look at the facts and stats around that, there are nearly a third of the globe's population that still do not have access to basic sanitation. And I kind of find that really incredulous in many ways. But equally close to home, we need to provide decent work for everybody. When you think about facilities management, and one of the early speakers this morning spoke around this, we employ some of the lowest paid people anywhere in any industry. And, if you're not at least paying your employees who work in those types of lower paid professions and jobs, at least supporting the real living wage foundation, then as far as I'm concerned, it's shame on us and shame on our business. We talked earlier, and James and Mike touched on this, about procurement, and I'm going to speak about that in a few moments. But for whatever reason, we seem to have, we've commoditised our own industry. We've driven down to the bottom line. Lowest cost wins. Anybody in procurement? You've nearly won zero, your nirvana's here, zero cost. We're almost there. But we have got, that's the only humour I can do, I'm sorry. I'm sorry it's at your expense. And the afternoon's cracking on, and I think everyone's looking forward to some drinks later and a bit of networking. But I also want to talk about another agenda, which is equality, diversity and inclusion. I was really impressed early this morning around the Sophia and Kelly from Atlantia and Sylvester talking about those agenda items. George, wherever George, if he's still here, was talking a lot about from Eric Wright as well. So important for the whole social agenda that faces us for the future. Okay, so I think I'll move on quickly. This next slide is probably the most complex one I will put up in the next sort of 14 or 15 minutes. It's the heart of my entire discussion. I really believe that together we are better. And I'm going to cover 4 topics to try and get to this point of why I think our industry is together, is better when we're together. If I think about social value and think about something that was talked about a little earlier, we've tried so hard to work with our local supply chains in local economies, in local regions, very close in proximity to our clients and our customers. We've gone out into those local communities to fully understand what's happening in those communities, what crime is like, what unemployment is like, what education opportunities are like, what's the local social housing look like, what are job prospects looking like, to really understand how supply chain works, how it operates. For me, that is working together to make a real, tangible difference. It is not doing what we've done an awful lot, which is throwing out specs and tenders to lots and lots of local supply chain in order to expecting them to complete lots and lots of documentation and all to drive them down to the lowest cost. It is about understanding. And I think, Kitra, you're going to talk about costs shortly, aren't you? Looking forward to that. Not long to go. Okay, so I'd like just to move on and turn a quick corner. I'm going to talk about ISO 44001, real structured collaboration and why it's important. I'm going to talk about why we should find a better way. I'm going to touch a little bit on hybrid working models. And then I want to just spend a few moments and talk about, for me, what is so important to make collaboration work, and that is emotional and relational intelligence. And throughout the day, we haven't really touched an awful lot around that. We have talked about real, tangible people engagement. But emotional and relational intelligence, they for me are the building blocks for really authentic collaboration that really works. And anyone that thinks that maybe collaboration is not a good thing, or it's structured, or it's difficult, or it's challenging, ICW, the Institute for Collaborative Working that Martin mentioned earlier, and also Warwick Business School have been publishing lots of results, facts and figures around collaborative business-to-business relationship models that have been successful. And they have shown and demonstrated through case study references, and you can download the materials from their site, that a collaborative business relationship model outperforms traditional contracting on nearly every single dimension, from return on investment and attraction of investment all the way through to operational performance. Okay, I think the last thing I'd like to say on the Together We Are Better piece is that at EMCOR UK, we've got some really great collaborations. They do outperform our more transactional orientated relationships. But then again, we spent a lot of time selecting who we work with. We select partners to work with, clients, and also supply chain that meet and match our own culture, that match and meet our own values and our own aspiration. Our aspirations to help and support this industry be better, to attract new and diverse talent into our industry for the future, to future-proof it, as much as it is to work with organisations that have got really great business ethics, that are very ethical in their supply chain and are obviously, of course, adhering to things like modern slavery and the payment that we talked about a little bit earlier. We've subsequently worked with organisations like Business in the Community, the Supply Chain Sustainability School, which again is a really super free online resource if you want to get on there and talk and look about stuff of sustainability matters, and also Climate Seed. Very hard, very challenging for us, but we work with these companies to try and make our organisation better for the future. Okay, I'd like to turn a quick corner. This is the only detailed slide I've got on here, and I've only put this up for one reason. My guess is that most of us in the room today have probably joined facilities management somewhere in one of these decades, I think. I hope that I'm not causing anybody any offence by that. But the purpose of this slide is not the detail that sits in it. I think as an industry, together, we have taken our industry from when I first started, which was, I think my first job in FM, or it was administration back then, was the Becker bin projects, to go back to the theme that Georgina talked about earlier, was big plastic boxes to put more plastic cups in and then hopefully dispose of them in some particular way. But that was back in the 80s when we were very much a janitorial orchestrated sort of industry. All the way through to this top sort of left as you're looking, we've done so much to change this industry, to bring people into this industry for the future. But at the same time, we've seen absenteeism and presenteeism in the workplace increase. We've seen mental health of people off poorly as a result of a mental health issue increase dramatically. Homelessness. There are nearly 300,000 people living on Britain's streets today. It breaks my heart whenever I see this, and I see it in the cities that I travel in. I travel in Liverpool, in Manchester, in Preston, in London, to name just four. And it is, well, we need to do something about it. And I think our industry can really play our role in helping with that. We did a survey as part of the IWFM conference last year, and we asked organisations, how prepared are you for net zero and the net zero challenge? And our survey said, broadly speaking, that about 48% were fully prepared or nearly prepared. But a staggering 52% were not prepared or not prepared at all. I find that hard because we've talked about Scope 1, Scope 2. It's mandatory to be reporting on that, as well as the Scope 3 emissions, and we've talked about how easy it is now to really start to look at those upstream and downstream pieces. Experts, I guess, for decades have taught us that inaction on these key topics is going to lead to catastrophic results. I'm not suggesting that maybe these are sort of biblical wrath of God type issues, but we could face mass hunger, mass migration, mass floods. We could face climate change that is on a level that will change the human world, our human way of life forever, and it may well be irreversible. Okay, I'm now going to move on to what I think is for me is going to be topic one. I've got 4 very quick topics. Structured collaboration. Why do I think it's important? And I say structured because structured is important. It's not some kind of vague concept, something that maybe you might do, or you've got a little P and you've got some partnerships with some organisations. You are collaborating at a business-to-business level, and you have very clear purpose. You have vision. You know what it is you're going to try to achieve. You set joint objectives. You know how to share risk jointly. You know how to attract investment into that relationship, to make change really happen, to deliver impacts. The key word there in structured collaboration is the word joint. It is extraordinarily difficult to do, because my guess is that it's a challenge for us sometimes to trust each other on a one-to-one basis, to trust organisations, to trust motive, to trust behaviours. You have got to be able to trust each other if you're going to collaborate for the long term and effectively. That brings me on to another point around structured collaboration. It's not a short-term, quick fix win. It's not, as Georgia said this morning, it's not a silver bullet. You don't just start to collaborate and suddenly all your problems go away. For me, it's one way of looking at the medium to long term and starting with the end in mind. What is it you want to achieve? Carbon neutrality, equality, diversity, inclusion in the workplace, decarbonisation of the asset systems, improvement in the building fabric and the structure, better work, more decent work for people, opportunity, learning and development. At the same time as giving you access into new resource, new opportunity, new systems, new processes, and harmonising and fusing that together. That's structured collaboration. And I think if we were to adopt it more in our industry, I really feel we'll be able to unlock more value. Collaborative relationships have the ability to unlock value, to unlock that conversation that we often find so difficult. And I'm going to come on to my next point in a moment and turn a corner into why I think we need to find a better way. I think that over the last sort of 20 years or so, we've been asking the same question in facilities management. Which FM model works best? Single services, soft services bundles, hard services, combination of the both, TFMs, IFM, integrator models, hybrid models. We consistently ask these questions. We often go to market to find suppliers and providers to deliver with services that we can't deliver sometimes ourselves. We do this with a variety of skill, capability and knowledge, to the point that, James, you mentioned before, specifications that become very, very difficult, exhaustive almost, complex and complicated for small, medium-sized enterprises or micro-sized enterprises to interpret and understand. Clients sometimes don't understand. We've done this ourselves. We've put specifications to the market that we've not fully understood, of varying quality, of varying data accuracy. And then we give organisations a short period of time to compress, condense, understand, read maybe 15 Dickens novels in maybe a period of a week and respond back with innovation and something new and something different within a 5 to 6 week time frame. Anybody from the Crown Commercial Services? Anybody on the Crown Commercial Services framework? Bidding for work? Okay. I choose words very carefully, but I really find it is a 6 week process that is very highly structured, is completely closed in terms of who you go and meet and who you go and see at any point in time in that process, that you can be deemed non-compliant if you're 11-point font and not 10-point font. Is that really in the best public interest? Is it value for taxpayers' money? I think it's not, and I think we need to disrupt those types of models significantly. Equally, on the more traditional side of procurement, we put things out and we ask the how and not the what. The what's the outcome? It's net zero, more sustainability, better social value, better employment opportunities. That's the what. Better buildings, better building performance, optimisation of your assets, better buildings. That's all about the what, not the how. And then we turn the screw even further and we start talking about costs and margins and overhead and profit. I'm a great believer that every organisation has the right to make money if they're in that particular sector. If you're in the third sector, you need the cash, you need the investment to continue to go to the good, the great good that you do in the third sector. You can't shrink your way to get greatness. I kind of really think that this is almost FM myopia, this drive to the bottom line, this commoditisation of our brilliant industry. And the final point I want to make on this, I think that if we want to co-invest and co-create value and really innovate, those models have to change. They have to focus more on win-win and not win-lose. How often do we go into negotiation with this win-lose mentality? We walk out sometimes lose-win. We have to find win-win. Let's accelerate our discussion to look at the third topic. So collaborative relationships, they really are the influence models. I guess you could call them consensus building frameworks that forge real alignment between a number of different organisations. You create that joint relationship management plan that I talked about before. You can use the ISO, the International Standard 44001 framework, to help you through that process. It's not necessarily prescriptive, but it's very clear with what you need to do, with lots of support materials to help you collaborate for a better future tomorrow. But I want to introduce something called vested outsourcing. Anybody touched, looked at, thought about vested outsourcing? Yeah? Okay, so a few of you. If you've not, this is coming out of the University of Tennessee. Don't take my word for it about anything about this. Go explore what it's about. Kate Vitasak is the trailblazer for vested outsourcing. She's a really endearing sort of person to speak to. She'll talk to anybody, extraordinarily passionate about what she does. Alternatively, there are a plethora of books that you can go on Amazon to download about vested outsourcing. Maybe one I could recommend is Changing the Nature of Our Relationships, which talks about Procter & Gamble, McDonald's, Accenture, to name but 3 organisations that are using vested outsourcing as a really great vehicle to do something different tomorrow. The model focuses, again, on outcomes. It is very, very similar in its nature to ISO 44001. a lot of structure, a lot of process that you need to go through, a lot of good practice. Unlike ISO, it doesn't have the benefits of an international standard whereby the international standards use high-level structure for continuous improvement, improvement in leadership, improvement in performance and measurement. But what it does have is something called vested economics. And I'm really interested in this vested economics. This is about putting the money up front. This is about looking at the terms and conditions you're going to work towards together. This is about building collaboration into those terms and conditions, into the very fabric of the contracts that you use. You probably can gather I'm not a great believer that the contract is something we put into a drawer. The contracts that we work to spell out exactly how we're going to work together. They provide flexibility and agility for us to innovate. They provide the flexibility for us to invest. And if they're written using plain English, please, then you really can start to gain momentum. And that's what I like about vested. But the money piece, this is now about looking where you put the money. So we talked about profit and overhead, which is always a big thing. Why is that company making so much money? Well, maybe a different model is required, and maybe rather than having some of the payment mechanisms and the cost plans that come with tenders that are on a 1-year time frame, we look at 5-year time frames. We look at profit and overhead that is proportionate to the risk and or investment of the collaboration. That we put profit and overhead that is actually proportionate to the level of service that we're delivering. If we're delivering really added value, the outcomes, yes, maybe we deserve to have a profit and overhead that is slightly bigger. If we're conducting transactions at the other end of the scale, maybe that profit and overhead is less. Think about it. Okay, I need to turn my final corner and move on to my last two pieces. The fourth topic I have to talk about is human behaviours. It's the final corner in this. For me, behaviour in any relationship is absolutely critical, and you need to be able to trust each other. There are so many trust models out there you can go and look at, and if you want to catch up later on, we can talk about the trust index or some of the 360 trust bridgeways that other people are doing as well, which are really great ways to measure the trust between you, your partner and your organisation. If you do it, you might find a shock. I know the first time that we did it, we were absolutely shocked that our clients, and we did this 15 years ago, might I add, didn't really think we were a great organisation to do business with. They thought we were very highly transactional. They thought we were adversarial. They thought we were difficult to deal with. I kind of think that's probably right. I mean, we were hard to work with ourselves, let alone work with other organisations. But that enabled us to think about what do we need to do. And one of the things that came out of this was we recognised we didn't really have great relationship builders. We didn't have people that really had a 360-degree view of themselves. They weren't on point with who they are and what they are. They didn't know how to communicate efficiently or effectively. We were really poor listeners. Everyone knows about active listening. Active listening is, I'm interested in what you've got to say. I'm really listening to you. I understand you implicitly and explicitly. We didn't have those skills. A couple of years ago, I was involved with some research with Warwick Business School again, with the British Standards Institute, with Indra, with Mutt McDonald, and with Babcock and Network Rail. And we were looking at the future of collaboration. And the number one that came out of our survey work that we did with over 160 micro, small, and big-sized businesses was emotional and relational intelligence. I'm just going to tell you the 5 things that we came up with that are not new, but they're important ingredients. Reciprocity, understanding the benefits of mutual exchange, finding win-win. You need special skills to do that. Creating a network of psychological safety. Only when you can create psychological safety in the workplace can you really get people to perform, to feel free to express themselves, to be who they are. Once you've done that, you're going to get invention and you're going to get innovation. And then the final point, embracing individual difference. Understanding how other people, I guess, connect with the world, how they see the world. And that's the point about equality, about diversity and inclusion. I think that we all embrace difference. It's good to have difference. Difference brings new perspective, new ideas from left and right of centre when you least expect it. And if you can put that into your organisation, you're well on the way to achieving outcomes. And then finally, in absolute conclusion, I think we've got an opportunity for a new paradigm shift in the way that we focus on outcomes through the vested models and also through ISO 44001. I think we need, as an industry, to find a better way. We need to focus on win-win impacts and outcomes, and for me that means challenging the traditional procurement models both in private and public sector. I think we need to have a structured approach to the way that we collaborate so that we can build trust. And finally, I think if you want to get real investor confidence in this sector, and let's face it, we struggle to attract real investment, you need to build confidence. I think we can build confidence by better employee engagement, attracting new talent into our industry, and building that into the very fabric of our collaborative relationships and into our contracts. You know, this is not about profit maximisation for me. This is about maximising our opportunity to affect real change. And I really believe that together as an industry, we're better. Thank you.